Between 1769 and 1770, a devastating famine swept through the region of Bengal. By the time the immediate crisis passed, it had wiped out an estimated one-third of the local population. But if you examine the East India Company's official ledgers from that exact period, you see a deeply unsettling contradiction. This table documents the company's net collections. Look at the transition from 1769, the year of dearth, to 1770, the year of the famine and mortality. Instead of dropping, the tax revenue actually went up, climbing from 13.1 million to over 14 million rupees. To understand how profits could rise while millions starved, we have to look at the bizarre legal structure the company engineered under Governor John Cartier. It was known as the dual government. The system split the state in two. The East India Company claimed absolute control over the territory's finances and taxation. However, they entirely outsourced the actual responsibilities of governing, things like civic administration, justice, and public works, to the decaying remnants of the Mughal bureaucracy. The company deliberately positioned itself as a passive receiver of cash. They operated on the strict legal stance that because they were officially just merchants, they had no obligation to provide protective power or relief to the people paying those taxes. When a historic drought hit, there was no administrative apparatus equipped or funded to respond. The resulting death toll was the mathematical certainty of an extraction-only corporate machine encountering a crisis that required civic spending. At the highest levels in Fort William, leadership treated the looming disaster with calculated evasion. This historical document notes how outgoing Governor Harry Verelst quietly laid down his office right after the failed harvest of 1769. He intentionally omitted his signature from the primary letter warning London of the famine, neatly avoiding any paper trail of accountability. Down the chain of command, local administrators actively suppressed reports of the starvation on the ground. They needed to maintain the illusion of a flourishing, highly profitable state to appease their superiors. By the time the London directors realized the danger and dispatched emergency orders aboard the ship Lapwing, months had already passed in transit. Even worse, when those orders finally arrived in Bengal, they triggered a fatal bureaucratic bottleneck. The two main governing bodies, the Select Committee and the Council, began viciously fighting over who actually had the legal authority to execute London's commands. While people died in the streets, the colonial leadership spent months debating procedural rules. As Verelst himself complained in a farewell letter, their time was entirely consumed with debating, preparing, and dictating, ensuring that decisions were retarded and government completely stalled. A corporate structure engineered to divide internal power and protect its own financial optics simply cannot coordinate an urgent humanitarian response. While leadership argued over jurisdiction in Calcutta, mid-level agents out in the provinces saw the drought as an immediate market opportunity. This predatory behavior was built directly into the company's payroll. The East India Company paid its senior servants incredibly low official salaries. To generate actual wealth, these officials were implicitly expected to engage in off-the-books private trading. Because of this incentive, senior personnel actively avoided working at the main headquarters. They preferred far-flung upcountry factories, free from oversight. As crops failed, officials forced panicked peasants to sell rice at rock-bottom prices. Agents hoarded this grain, creating artificial market corners, and resold food back to the population at extortionate rates. The famine was weaponized by a compensation model that legally incentivized employees to cannibalize their own captive consumer base for personal profit. Eventually, the court of directors in London realized that the violent, oppressive methods used to maintain tax revenues were destroying the long-term viability of their entire Bengal asset. They ordered a severe internal purge. London fired uncooperative council members, strictly banned the upcountry monopolies that enabled the grain hoarding, and mandated that all top leadership remain confined to the presidency. But the company also faced massive public backlash in Britain for the astronomical death toll. To survive the scandal, they desperately needed a political scapegoat.
They found their target in the Naib Diwan, Mohammad Reza Khan, the highest-ranking local official in their dual system. This official dispatch specifically authorized the company to strip him of his power and launch an investigation into his alleged misconduct, conveniently using him as a shield to deflect from the corporation's own systemic failures. This targeted arrest paved the way for a historic mandate in 1772, one that permanently terminated the charade of the double government. London ordered their operatives to stand forth as Dewan. As this dense list of bureaucratic responsibilities clearly shows, this order meant the East India Company was forced to seize direct control over the territory's justice, public works, and revenue collections. The catastrophic failure of 1770 proved that a territory cannot be managed like a corporate spreadsheet. The disaster forced the company to abandon its pure merchant roots, inadvertently giving birth to the administrative foundations of the British Raj.